Hey guys, today I'll show you a vampire horror thriller TV series named Van Helsing, Season 5. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins with a bearded villager named Florian wandering through a cemetery, searching for his missing beardless sister. It seemed as though God had heard his prayers because suddenly a swirling energy tornado appeared nearby. Curious, Florian approached to investigate using his sensitive beard, and out from the time and space vortex was flung a figure. It was Jack, who had been sent to the past timeline by a mysterious force. The sight of Jack so startled Florian that he turned and fled, with Jack chasing after him, following his smelly beard. During the pursuit, she noticed an ancient castle not far ahead. Jack realized she might have stumbled into a bizarre place. At the same time, a vampire-like creature slowly emerged from the distant castle. Jack continued to follow Florian into a village, where she finally tackled him to the ground. It turned out he thought Jack was an evil witch since she had emerged from the energy column, just like doing time travel. Jack covered his chicken mouth, insisting she just wanted to know where she was. When she let go, Florian screamed in a chicken voice, attracting the attention of nearby villagers. Jack quickly tried to explain that she wasn't a witch, but the village chief wouldn't listen and knocked her unconscious with a slap, placing her on the chopping block. As she lay there, memories of being trapped in a sarcophagus flooded back. She was awakened by the voice of Vanessa, who had also appeared from the sarcophagus. Vanessa guided Jack toward a light column that could be used to defeat the Dark One. She instructed Jack to find and destroy the Lord's path while promising to protect her. Suddenly, monsters appeared, and Vanessa covered Jack's retreat, urging her to leave quickly. Waking from her daze, Jack felt like she was experiencing what Vanessa had in Hong Kong. It all seemed like an illusion. At that moment, Florian, searching for his sister, reappeared, informing Jack that she would be executed tomorrow. He urged her to reveal his missing sister's whereabouts while she still could. Just then, a voice distracted Florian, who left to seek help. A vampire then approached Jack, baring its teeth but daring not to bite. Florian returned, armed with his sensitive beard and ready to fight the vampire, but as a simple villager, he was no match for its vampire muscles. Jack, having freed herself, took up a sword and fought the vampire, eventually driving it away. A crowd of villagers arrived, witnessing Jack's wounds heal rapidly. They suspected her of using dark magic like a witch, but Florian quickly explained that Jack had saved his bearded life. Together, they pursued the vampire into the forest, but the village chief was suddenly attacked and bitten. Florian discovered that the vampire was actually his own sister. Jack wanted to revert the vampire back to human, but she was stopped by the man. As the village chief began to transform, Jack bit him using her unbrushed teeth, much to everyone's astonishment. Nonchalantly, she declared that they are the vampires, and she is the cure for vampirism. The scene shifts to a mysterious ancient castle where the Count returned home on his Ferrari horse, only to hear his wife's screams of agony. When he rushed upstairs, the maid informed him that his child had been successfully born, and the Countess is none other than the Dark One herself. But at this moment, she is still human, and the midwife is none other than the original leader of the vampire sisterhood, Michaela. Just months before, the Count had invited Michaela to treat his wife's infertility. Meanwhile, in the distant forest, another group of vampire hunters appeared, led by Oracle. Their target was Michaela. From a scout, they learned of a mysterious woman claiming to be a vampire hunter with the power to reverse vampirism. Thinking that the enemy of her enemy is her friend, Oracle tasked the scout to investigate further. On the other side, in an effort to save his mutated sister, Florian spent all his savings to treat Jack to a lavish meal. Their current goal was to locate the vampire sisterhood, but this was not an easy task for just the two of them. Florian revealed that he was once a key aide to the Count, so they decided to seek the Count's help and went to meet him. The man explained the vampire situation, but the Count was skeptical until the sisterhood was mentioned, which noticeably changed his demeanor, and he abruptly dismissed them. As the two walked and talked, rumors had it that the Countess had been infertile until a nun arrived, and she miraculously conceived. However, at the same time, many villagers mysteriously disappeared and the disappearances continued. Jack felt there must be a connection because the Count's reaction to the mention of the sisterhood was distinctly unnatural. He seemed to know something. Jack inquired about the Countess. Florian took her to a gallery displaying portraits of the Counts through the ages, with the central portrait being a special one of the current Count and his wife. Jack was shocked to see the portrait because the Countess was the very dark one she had been searching for. She also understood why Vanessa had sent her here. She explained to Florian that the Countess would become a manipulator of darkness in the future. Although the Countess was still human, she was destined to fall into darkness, and Jack's mission was to kill her. However, Florian argued that the Countess was kind-hearted and sexy, urging Jack to consider other ways to prevent her descent into darkness. Jack pretended to agree but insisted on meeting the Countess to determine if she had already fallen into darkness. Coincidentally, the Count was hosting a celebration for his son's birth the following day, and the Countess would surely be there. That night, the Countess was awakened by a voice. She opened the window, climbed up to gaze at the moon, but fortunately the Count arrived just in time to bring her down. She explained to the Count that something seemed to be calling her, which made her feel very frightened. Comforted by the Count's words first and muscles later, she slowly drifted back to sleep. The Count noticed several bottles and jars nearby, suspecting they were related to the midwife, Michaela. He went down to the cellar and found Michaela discussing with several women. Listening carefully, he realized that the recent village disappearances were their doing. In the mirror, Michaela's face appeared as an ugly old lady. After drinking a tube of diabetic blood, she regained her youthful appearance. Terrified, the Count left the cellar as Michaela sensed something unusual and turned to look behind. The Count's party went on as scheduled the next day. However, the guards reported that the Count's beloved horse had mysteriously died. The Count hurried to inspect the situation, while the Countess continued her stroll through the town, accompanied by a guard. During her walk, a man emerged from a tent, telling her that the vampire hunter oracle inside could foresee events 500 years into the past and 500 years into the future. Intrigued, the Countess decided to have her fortune told, only to be alarmed by the prediction of imminent disaster. Angered by the ominous prophecy, she stormed her sexy body out of the tent. At the same time, Michaela was conducting a mysterious ritual, aiming to summon the Dark One, with the Countess as the perfect vessel. Chanting spells, Michaela threw strands of the Countess's hair into an alchemy furnace, causing a red mist to rise. At that moment, Jack's mark reacted, indicating that the Dark One had awakened. In a swift move, Jack knocked down Florian with a punch, seized a dagger, and charged toward the Countess. After pushing past the guards, Jack reached the Countess and plunged the dagger into her heart. The surrounding villagers screamed like chickens in horror as their revered Countess was brutally slain. Meanwhile, Michaela, furious over the failed ritual, shouted in anger. In the dead of night, Michaela visited the prison, determined to discover who had thwarted her ritual. Unexpectedly, Jack called out her name and revealed her plans. Confidently, Jack believed she had prevented the darkness from descending. However, Michaela retorted that it was naive to think that the death of one woman could stop fate. Now, Jack faced execution by hanging the following morning, unable to thwart Michaela any further. Although Jack had succeeded in killing the vessel of darkness, her actions had incited the anger of the local populace, and she was now facing a cruel execution. She repeatedly urged Florian to kill Michaela, warning that she would attempt to resurrect the Dark One. Suddenly, Florian turned against her, calling for the evil witch to be killed. As the executioner released the lever, Jack was tragically killed in the streets. Meanwhile, Michaela was rallying the sisterhood to resurrect the Dark One again. Although the original vessel was dead, she had other means and now required a significant amount of human blood. She ordered the sisterhood to hunt humans, behead Jack's corpse, and retrieve the mark from her hand. Soon, 2 members of the sisterhood dragged out Jack's body to behead her. Just as they were about to strike with an axe, Jack suddenly revived, grabbed a shovel, and knocked one unconscious. In the chaos, she also managed to reverse the condition of Florian's sister. With his beardless sister awake, Jack urged her to quickly find her brother. As Jack prepared to confront another vampire, she was suddenly slain by a sword. Recognizing the assailant as Oracle, Jack attacked her in confusion. Oracle, bewildered by her aggression, explained his situation, causing Jack to realize that Oracle was still human and a vampire hunter. Oracle then urged Jack to follow her for safety. At Oracle's camp, Jack learned that her family had long been hunting Michaela, but they were now nearly extinct due to heavy losses. In their discussion, Jack revealed that Michaela intended to summon the Dark One, so she convinced Oracle that killing Michaela would end everything. After their conversation, Jack stepped outside and noticed a blood necklace around the man's neck, a family heirloom of the Van Helsing family, which possibly indicates that Oracle is also a Van Helsing. Elsewhere, Florian was sulking and drinking heavily, blaming himself for being deceived by Jack, which he believed led to the Countess's murder. The village chief tried to console him, suggesting that since the murderer was now dead, things would start to get better. However, just then, a series of horrifying screams erupted from outside. Everyone inside grabbed weapons and rushed out to check, but none of those who went out returned alive. Outside, the screams continued relentlessly. As Florian was about to join the fight, ready and armed with his messy beard, the door was suddenly slammed shut. The floor shook violently and the screams outside were unending. Terrified, he retreated step by step, but suddenly, a vampire appeared right behind him and grabbed him tightly. At that moment, a sword pierced through the vampire's chest. It was his long-lost sister. Florian asked her how she had turned back into a human, and after his sister explained everything, the two cried tears of joy like two giant babies. Meanwhile, screams filled the ancient castle as Michaela continued her dark magic rituals. A barrel of fresh diabetic blood was poured into a bathtub, and many villagers had already been captured. Even the maids of the castle were not spared. As Michaela chanted her spells, the Countess suddenly revived and opened her eyes. However, more blood was still needed. Elsewhere, the sleeping Count was awoken by the cries of a child. He called out for his maids, but no one responded. When he went to check, he discovered his wife had been resurrected and was holding the child. Trying to remain calm, he comforted her, suggesting she needed to rest and asked her to hand the child over to him. The child stopped crying once he was in his father's arms. When his wife touched his face, he felt an icy chill running down his spine to his smelly butt. Meanwhile, members of the sisterhood returned to inform Michaela that all the people they had sent out were dead. The Count confronted Michaela, demanding to know what witchcraft she had used on his dead wife. Michaela told him that a perfect life comes at a price, and that he should now consider if the villagers discovered the Countess was alive. She would be the one hanged at tomorrow's market. Suddenly, the Countess awoke with the memories of her murder flashing before her eyes. She found herself in the mortuary, seeing her own portrait and coffin, and realized she was dead as shit. The Count appeared at the doorway and told her there was now a place more suited for her current state. He then led her to a cellar and told her she must never leave. The Countess tried to touch her husband's handsome face but was coldly rejected. The promises of eternal love had now turned to dust. She was confined like a monster, extinguishing the last glimmer of hope in her heart. She frantically knocked on the door, unwilling to stay there alone. Listening to her annoying child crying, she couldn't meet with him. The light was gradually fading away. In desperation, she smashed the mirror, contemplating her wretched life. Yet, as she slashed at her arms repeatedly, not a single drop of blood flowed. Meanwhile, Jack had found the two siblings. She asked Florian's sister why she had dug herself out. The girl revealed that Michaela was now collecting fresh blood and was interested in studying the mark on Jack's arm. Upon realizing that tonight was the night of the full moon, Jack knew trouble was brewing. She hurriedly sought Oracle, informing her that they must stop Michaela's plan tonight. Jack planned to use the mark on her arm to lure Michaela out for a final showdown. As night fell, the group gathered in the woods, finalizing their plan. Jack cut her palm and let the blood drip onto the mark. The pentagram began to emit a red glow, and Jack's eyes suddenly turned white. Her consciousness was instantly beside Michaela, who was shocked that Jack knew how to use the pentagram. Jack tempted her, suggesting she come to the woods if she wanted to learn more. Soon after, Jack regained consciousness and instructed everyone to hide in ambush. However, when Michaela appeared, Jack called for oracles, but no one was around. With a flick of her wrist, Michaela sent Jack flying like a heavy Barbie toy. Although immobilized, Jack struggled forward under immense pressure. Michaela sensed trouble, but it was too late. Jack lunged at her, biting her neck. Jack was pleased with herself for thwarting Michaela, but Michaela laughed her hair off. Her neck was unscathed. Meanwhile, Jack felt as if she had been infected, incredulously watching her body transform. As she regained consciousness, Oracles and the others looked at her as if she were a fool, realizing they had been deceived by Michaela. Elsewhere, with the full moon shining brightly, Michaela brought out the Countess and had already prepared a pentagram on the ground. She led the Countess to the center, and as Michaela slashed her palm, the sisterhood members also let their blood drip. As Jack and the others desperately rushed towards them, Michaela began chanting spells, summoning the spirits of darkness. A massive black fog rose from the ground, swirling in the sky before plunging into the Countess. Jack watched the distant sky, knowing they had failed. The Countess now woke up with eyes as large as those of a Caslin, indicating a successful ritual, and it was the first time the Dark One had descended upon the human realm. But she showed no mercy and gratitude. She was the mightiest presence. With a wave of her hand, she killed all the surrounding vampires. She needed no one and would listen to no one. Michaela's well-laid plans were utterly ruined. The Dark One struck her with a palm, and in her final moments, Michaela finally submitted to the Dark One, hurriedly changing her tone to proclaim her as her master thereafter. At that moment, Jack and her companions had also arrived nearby. The Dark One sensed a danger approaching. Michaela immediately informed her that a powerful vampire hunter had emerged recently. The Dark One ordered to find this hunter without delay. Following the trace of a mark, Michaela began searching for Jack's location. At the same time, the mark on Jack's arm reacted. Jack knew it must be Michaela hunting them down. She called for Oracle's help, and the best solution seemed to be to cut off the mark. However, it was like a curse that clung to her bones, and it took a great deal of effort to finally remove it. The Dark One was very displeased with Michaela's failure to find them, but as the sun had already risen, vampires could not go out. For the Dark One, however, this was trivial. She cast a spell into the sky, turning the bright sky into darkness. Those who ran out and saw the dark sky knew that good times for vampires were coming. Oracle was also shocked by the powerful magic. She couldn't handle even one Michaela, let alone the powerful Dark One. At this point, Jack reminded her that she could use her family's magical scrolls. After all, only magic could defeat magic. But using magic came at a cost. Oracle's mother had fallen into darkness because of it. To fulfill her family's mission, Oracle decided to go back and retrieve the magical scroll. The village was already in chaos. A sorority was rampantly slaughtering the villagers, and soon the area was cleared. Only Florian and his sister managed to escape. A vampire chased after them but was suddenly killed by an arrow shot by Jack and her timely arrivals. On the other side, the Count was planning to leave with his baby son, intending to seek help outside and then come back to reclaim the castle. However, the Dark One was already waiting for them at the gate. The Count ordered his men to kill her since she was no longer the Countess they knew. The soldiers charged, but the Dark One effortlessly flung them away and immobilized the Count. The captain of the guard was not so lucky and ended up as the Dark One's dinner. The Count pleaded with the Dark One to spare his child, saying he could die in any manner. But to his surprise, the Dark One agreed, on the condition that the Count obey her commands. Michaela had seen Jack imprisoned, but when she turned back, there was no one in the dungeon anymore. Suddenly, a squad of soldiers appeared and attacked her fiercely without a word. The Dark One tried to cast a spell to stop them, but to no avail. It was clear that Oracle was using magic to interfere with the Dark One. At that moment, the sound of a distant bell signified their plan had succeeded. Not long before, Jack had learned about the scroll's power to weaken the Dark One, leaving her extremely vulnerable. However, the caster would also be corrupted by darkness. If they couldn't endure, they too would fall into darkness. Oracle instructed Jack that if she truly fell into darkness, she must kill her in time. Just then, noises from outside drew their attention. It turned out the Count had proactively sought out Oracle, claiming he would do anything to protect his son. The scene shifts to Michaela coming to ask the Count whether he had completed the orders given by the Dark One. The Count informed her that Jack had been captured and was now in the dungeon and that all the others had been killed. He told her that if she wanted to interrogate, she'd have to do it herself. Consequently, in the dungeon, the Count personally decapitated Michaela. Shortly after, he went to look for his son. At this time, the Dark One had become very weak and reverted to her original form as the Countess. She claimed she had returned to normal and could now live a peaceful life with the Count. However, the Count was not fooled. Pulling out a dagger, he stabbed it into her heart, remembering Jack's warning that the Dark One could create illusions, and therefore he could not trust her. But as he picked up his son, the Dark One stood up behind him and turned the Count into a vampire. Meanwhile, Jack and her companions arrived at the corner of the city walls. Oracle explained that after extracting the dark power, it must be sealed within the blood necklace to avoid being controlled by the Dark One. This was the origin of the Van Helsing family heirloom. As they secretly entered the castle, they found it eerily empty, which they knew was unusual. Soon they encountered soldiers who had been transformed into vampires and realized they had walked into an ambush. Despite their superior martial skills, they couldn't kill the vampires. Jack decapitated the captain of the guard, but more vampires surrounded them. Florian and his comrades decided to hold off the remaining vampires, allowing Jack and Oracle to confront the Dark One. At that moment, the Dark One was holding the Count's son. Although she wanted to devour the child, the last shred of the Countess's reason did not allow her to do so. After coming to terms with this, the Dark One mockingly laughed and began nursing the baby. Jack and Oracle reached the passage leading to the rooftop, where the vampire-transformed Count was already waiting. The battle-hardened Count easily wounded Oracle and pinned Jack to the ground in a TikTok style. Jack, unable to resist, finally found an opportunity and bit the Count's neck, reversing his transformation. The now lucid Count regretted not listening to Jack earlier, which led to his family's ruin. Jack instructed the Count to regroup with the others, but he insisted on looking for his son. At that moment, the Dark One unleashed a magic orb, and a surge of dark power flew towards the beheaded Michaela. Jack and Oracle then confronted the Dark One, who was pleased as she could eliminate the vampire hunters all at once. Without wasting words, Oracle began reciting a dark spell, and the Dark One was immediately affected. Jack tried to approach but was immobilized by the Dark One. Despite this, she struggled forward determinedly. As she slowly approached, the Dark One blinded Oracle, breaking the spell. Jack was still frozen in place as the Dark One slowly approached. Jack urged Oracle to continue the incantation. Just as the Dark One was about to transform Jack, Oracle recited the spell. As the scroll emitted a bright light, the Dark One was affected again. Jack shouted angrily, chanting the incantation before biting the Dark One using her poisoned teeth. As the dark power was gradually extracted, unnoticed by anyone, a pair of hands appeared outside the window. In the next second, Oracle was pierced through by a sword, and Jack's spellcasting was forcibly interrupted. At this point, the Dark One felt as if her body had been hollowed out. She prepared to have Michaela reclaim her power. Oracle urged Jack to leave the place. Although they hadn't killed the Dark One, they had reached their limit. Using her last bit of strength, Oracle recited a spell again, blocking the two individuals, allowing Jack the chance to escape. Shortly after, at the Dark One's summoning, the dead Oracle rose again, now fallen into darkness and thus becoming the Dark One's first bride. After escaping, Jack followed the guidance of Oracle and sealed the dark power within the blood necklace. The next morning, Jack prepared to leave the area, wanting to distance herself from the Dark One and the vampires chasing her. Before she left behind the Van Helsing book and the blood necklace. It turns out Oracle's lineage was not of the Van Helsing family. They were an even older lineage of vampire hunters, with a tradition passed between the two families. Although Jack hadn't changed the past through time travel in the Dark Realm, she had altered a part of it. She believed that in the future these items would still be passed down to the Van Helsing family members. After everyone said their goodbyes to protect the Count's son, Florian's sister decided to give him a new name, Jack Van Helsing, who would be the first ancestor of the Van Helsing lineage. The scene shifts to the present timeline at the presidential office, which had been taken control by the Dark One. Now, Jack's time travel and changes to history also led to a weakening of the Dark One's powers. She discovered that mysteriously, a part of her power had vanished, and Oracle also found that Jack's distinct bite marks were still on her neck. Since Axel and his group arrived at the research base and were attacked by powerful vampires, only Axel and Julius survived. When Axel woke up, he found himself injected with an unknown serum. After removing the syringe, he heard noises outside, and using a cane, he went out to find Doc trying to save Julius. Axel joined in to help, and fortunately, they managed to save Julius in time. At that moment, Doc revealed the reason she was sent there. They had been experimenting with a new orange power which was extremely unstable and had severe side effects. It was lethal to both humans and vampires. The doctor here, eager for quick results, had used the vampires outside for experiments. Although many vampires were killed, some survived and mutated. One of these had run into the laboratory, leading to its breach. Axel suggested they could go out and counterattack, but Doc preferred to stay inside. However, when Axel mentioned that Jolene was still alive, it gave Doc renewed hope to escape. On the other side, Violet was electrocuted awake again by a stun baton. The soldier in charge of the interrogation did not believe her claim that the president had died. She searched everything here but ultimately found nothing. She pressed Violet on why she attempted to assassinate the president. Meanwhile, inside the White House, the president's aide came to see the president. He was very worried about her, who seemed like a changed person ever since her meeting with Jack. Moreover, the treatment for Violet, which shockingly involved medieval beheading, was completely inconsistent with the current U.S. legal policies. However, after some verbal persuasion from Oracle, the aide had no choice but to agree. At this time, Violet pretended to hang herself in the jail. When the guard came in to rescue her, she quickly subdued him using a strip of cloth. However, the soldiers who entered didn't rush to the guards' aid and even stated that the White House had just issued an order for their execution that night. They deemed the guard's life as unimportant, telling her to kill him if she must. Helpless, Violet had to give up. After the soldiers left, she obtained the guard's identity token and exchanged a knowing smile with Ivory held in the next cell. On the other side, Axel was monitoring the outside through surveillance cameras, looking for another escape route. However, the footage was bizarrely unsettling. He saw one vampire tear off another vampire's arm and even smash the camera. Axel was clueless about what the vampires outside were planning. At that moment, Julius woke up, and Doc was administering a new antidote to him. Suddenly, blood dripped down as Doc walked out. Axel, in another room, noticed that a ventilation duct had been opened. When he climbed up to investigate, he witnessed a horrifying scene. The vampire whose arm had been torn off had shrunk its body and silently crawled into the narrow duct. Doc rushed back to fetch special bullets, and after Axel fired 2 shots, the vampire fell down. The injured female vampire used her palm print to open the outside door, and a bulky vampire walked in. Axel and Doc had no choice but to retreat. The female vampire crawled over to a dead soldier while Axel climbed to the second floor, jumped down, and used nearby electricity to temporarily incapacitate the vampire. Doc tried to decapitate the vampire with a machete, but the blade got stuck in its neck. Fearing for her life, she threw the knife and fled. Eventually, they ran into a lab and smashed the lock on the door, temporarily securing their safety. In another twist, the room where Julius was suddenly opened and a severed hand was thrown in. The camera slowly moved to reveal the maimed female vampire, who apparently wanted to have a chat about life with Julius. Fortunately, Julius woke up just in time. At that moment, Doc noticed an intelligent vampire outside attempting to release carbon dioxide to force them out. She defiantly gave him the nose-picking finger. Although carbon dioxide poisoning was slow, their safety inside was no longer guaranteed. Doc grabbed a grenade from Axel and decided to confront the vampire outside, but as soon as she opened the door, a wave of blood plasma hit her face. It turned out that Julius had arrived just in time. On the other side, when the soldiers came to question Violet again, they discovered that both she and her companion had disappeared. Surveillance footage revealed that they had run off to the main server room. After capturing them, Violet explained that the backup surveillance footage was the evidence she needed. Out of curiosity, the officer in charge played the footage, which shockingly showed Jack killing the president. This left the officer with no choice but to believe that the current president was indeed the Dark One in disguise. Consequently, the soldiers returned their weapons to them. At that moment, Violet noticed the blood necklace and was surprised to find a strange substance inside it. Driven by curiosity, she opened the lid, and a cloud of black mist burst out. Thankfully, Ivory was quick to stop her. Violet then made contact with Axel, and Doc provided them with bullets capable of dealing with daywalkers. She then went off in search of a missing comrade. After bidding farewell, Axel and Julius set out to find Jack. In another room, the Dark One and Oracle were enjoying the pleasure of a feast. However, the Dark One was still brooding over the loss of power. Suddenly, Oracle saw some mysterious images and immediately cast a divination for herself. At the same time, the escaping power also found the Dark One. She slit her own palm and used her blood to perform black magic, seemingly summoning something that slowly drifted into the distance. Oracle's divination revealed that she would eventually die at the hands of a Van Helsing. As night fell, a cloud of smoke silently arrived and saw several people sleeping. It did not find its target, but the guarding woman heard a noise nearby. She went to investigate but found nothing. However, when she turned around, the smoke charged at her. The next day, when Violet and the others woke up, the woman was nowhere to be found, and they only discovered a gun lying on the ground. Eventually, they found the woman by the river, holding a knife in her left hand and her own heart in her right, her death gruesomely stark. They suspected the daywalkers nearby were responsible. Angered, they found a house. Ivory instructed the sisters to kill anything that moved, without sparing any faces for her. The minion girl and another went upstairs while Violet and Ivory searched downstairs. The minion girl opened the door and a rotten smell hit them, with a dead dog covered in flies inside. Suddenly, the converted member was dragged away and a daywalker ambushed them. Hearing the noise, Violet and Ivory rushed over, and Ivory easily beheaded the daywalker. The converted member was powerless to resist, and Ivory was furious because she had been the finest warrior back when she was a vampire. At night, the converted member saw a shadow outside the window, and the minion girl, who had just gone to the toilet, had not returned for a long time. Sensing something unusual, they decided to search together. They found a basement and saw a person with their back to them. It was the missing minion girl. The scene became eerie. As they approached, the minion girl turned around, her eyes blood red, continuously demanding her power back and attacking them. When they looked up again, the minion girl had obtained the blood necklace. Just as she was about to open it, Ivory decapitated her from behind. Later, Violet realized that this must have been a mysterious creature summoned by the Dark One to steal the blood necklace. Ivory also recalled that in vampire legends, there is a creature from the dark world called the Shadow Hunter, which relentlessly pursues everyone, and only the summoner can destroy it. Now, what they were facing was likely this creature. As soon as she finished speaking, a noise came from outside. Ivory told them to create a barrier with blood, smearing it on the glass and doors to form a sealed space. However, as Violet smeared blood on the glass, the Shadow Hunter outside had already set its sights on her. After making eye contact, Violet was affected and walked out the door. By the time Ivory rushed down from upstairs, it was already too late. Ivory chased after the creature relentlessly, but somehow, Violet ended up shooting her. Despite this, she continued walking towards the Shadow Hunter. Miraculously, Ivory came back to life, and under the constant manipulation of the Shadow Hunter, Violet was about to open the lid when Ivory swiftly pulled out a dagger and threw it, piercing Violet's heart, thus ending the influence. However, the Shadow Hunter wasn't going to give up so easily. Ivory closed her eyes to avoid making eye contact and loudly called out to her follower, urging her not to open her eyes and to make noise to guide herself back to the room. Once back, Ivory removed the dagger from Violet's body, and Violet immediately came to her senses. She quickly drew her pistol, pointing it at them, having no memory of her recent actions. Fortunately, Ivory quickly explained everything and returned the blood necklace to her. As the three discussed their next steps, noises from outside resumed, clearly indicating that the Shadow Hunter was not yet deterred. Violet immediately opened the vampire diary, searching for any relevant records, while the follower tried to light the fireplace. But as she moved towards it, she heard a strange noise. Curious, she looked up to see the Shadow Hunter, who had long been waiting outside. While the two were strategizing, they suddenly saw the follower approaching with a sword. Realizing something was wrong by her red eyes, they knew the Shadow Hunter had taken control of her. They continuously tried to persuade the girl to overcome her inner fears, but after several attempts at resistance, she could not withstand the darkness. In her last moment of lucidity, she picked up 2 swords and decapitated herself. At this point, Ivory was the only one left from their group. She cried in despair for the loss of her member, and Violet urged her to stay strong and to take proactive action rather than waiting defensively. Violet decided to delve into the darkness herself, so she opened the lid and absorbed all the black mist into her body, which immediately turned her eyes black. Ivory, trembling in a corner, watched as Violet loudly summoned the Shadow Hunter. Seizing the opportunity, Ivory took the blood necklace. The blood mist outside began swirling faster, and soon a human figure formed in front of Violet. As Violet told the Shadow Hunter to come home for dinner, the Shadow Hunter instantly vanished, accompanied by a dazzling golden light. Violet caught the blood necklace mid-air, sealed the black smoke back into the bottle, and then fainted. The next morning, Ivory packed her bags. Before leaving, Violet was browsing through the books and unexpectedly came across a portrait of Jack. Associating the black smoke and the necklace with the timeline in the book, she speculated that the mysterious energy in the blood necklace might be related to Jack. Moreover, the portrait contained a set of coordinates, which Violet immediately recognized as a code from their childhood. The coordinates pointed to the East Coast, indicating something might be hidden there. Elsewhere, a vampire was trapped in a car with only its head sticking out. It turned out to be Oracle, who had assigned tasks to the surrounding vampire leaders. Their main job was to kill Violet, dead or alive, but failure to do so would have dire consequences. This infuriated the bulky vampire, who decapitated another leader in a fit of rage. They didn't even know where the person was, so how could they carry out the assassination? At that moment, Violet and Ivory arrived at the coordinates left by Jack. The place was desolate, and they wondered what clues Jack could have left. Violet found a monument, and after inspecting it carefully, she deduced it was related to a nearby church. That night, they located a church and went inside. Violet's connection to Jack grew stronger. Just as they were about to search, they heard footsteps outside and quickly hid their heavy bodies. When the newcomers entered, Violet was about to shoot, but realized it was Axel and Julius. The four reunited and shared recent events. Axel and Julius had reverted to normal humans, losing their self-healing abilities. They were in a precarious situation, trapped between toxic orange powder and the tangible Dark One. Violet also informed Axel that Jack had traveled back in time from the past. Axel was utterly baffled by this time-traveling ability. They searched the area and soon found themselves in the basement where Violet discovered a message left by her sister Jack on a wall. Perhaps more clues were hidden behind it. Suddenly, a shotgun was pressed against them. The person was the local priest who had been guarding this place for centuries and demanded they leave immediately without further explanation. However, when Violet showed the blood necklace and declared herself a descendant of Van Helsing, the priest realized he had finally met the right person. After breaking through the wall, they pulled out a coffin. Violet pried open the lid with the help of others, and inside, wrapped in an American flag, was the mysterious scroll ever used by Oracle to weaken the powers of the Dark One. They thought this was the only item Jack had left behind. Axel urged them to leave quickly, but Violet's intuition grew stronger. With trepidation, she uncovered the white cloth to reveal the living Jack lying beneath, which shocked all of them. Axel told them that Jack might not be dead after all. She was just like Lillian and Vanessa before her, merely in a deep sleep. As for the method of awakening, he only knew that Vanessa had been awakened after being bitten by a vampire. Since Violet also possessed the dark bloodline, the difference shouldn't be substantial, so Violet decided to give it a try. Nervously, she took Jack's arm and bit down. Under their hopeful gazes, Jack eventually woke up. After waking up, Jack told them that Vanessa was still alive, trapped in the dark world. Her ability to travel from the past to the present might be due to a unique aspect of the Van Helsing lineage. The only way to defeat the Dark One was to find Oracle, turn her back into a human, and have her recite the spell on the magic scroll to weaken the Dark One's power. Armed and ready, they prepared to leave, but vampires had already gathered outside. At Axel's command, they began firing at the vampires with specially made bullets. Despite the vampires' fearless attack, the powerful gunfire kept them at bay until they ran out of bullets and had to engage in hand-to-hand combat. They retreated to the main hall to defend themselves. As the vampires pushed at the door, orange smoke suddenly appeared outside, killing both vampires and humans caught in it, leaving only the most brutal alive. As Axel and his group prepared to retreat, they heard screams outside. Only a few vampires were left, including the bulky vampire who had successfully mutated. Axel and his companions ran to the basement where the priest opened a secret passage, but the injured Julius was now in a worse condition. The priest urgently called for them to hurry through, but an old gate suddenly fell, trapping Violet and Julius outside. Violet handed the blood necklace to her sister, urging them to leave. It was a tradition in the Van Helsing family to sacrifice one to protect another. Knowing her mission, Jack had no choice but to leave reluctantly. At that moment, the mutated bulky vampire had already entered the church. Julius pulled out the special potion Doc had given him. He knew that if he drank it all, he would surely die. But to protect Violet, he didn't hesitate. As he screamed in agony, Julius's eyes turned orange. The two then emerged from the basement. Julius, armed with a kitchen knife, charged at the bulky vampire. They grappled fiercely, but the bulky vampire was no match for Julius in the first round. By the second round, however, Julius was visibly weakened and no longer a match for the bulky vampire. Violet tried to sneak up and attack, but was knocked out cold. Julius, shirtless now, picked up the kitchen knife again as the third round began. This time, Julius managed to pin the bulky vampire to the ground and furiously rubbed him down. Seizing the opportunity, he grabbed a cross from the ground and, while Julius was distracted, drove it into his heart. With his last breath, Julius also ripped out the bulky vampire's heart. In the end, both perished together. When Violet awoke, Julius was barely alive. Knowing his time had come, Julius spoke his final words and closed his eyes, leaving Violet crying in grief. Elsewhere, Jack was walking down the road, sensing Violet's heartache, but she had her own mission to continue. Axel, as someone who'd been through it all, allowed Jack a moment of sorrow. Suddenly, she heard Violet's call, and Ivory immediately responded. After triangulating the sound twice, Violet caught up with them. At that moment, Axel realized his good buddy was gone, and now it was up to him alone to protect the Van Helsing family. Now, for Julius and all who had died, Jack was determined to defeat the Dark One after waiting 300 years. But while the dream was grand, reality was harsh. The next second, they were bombarded by bombs falling from the sky, scattering chickens and dogs as they fled awkwardly through the woods. Using the trees for cover, they finally took refuge in a mine to hide until evening. When they set off again, they needed a car and weapons. But Axel suggested they needed even more to split up to prevent Violet and Jack from being caught all at once. Both agreed to the plan. Violet handed the blood necklace to Jack, since the Dark One and Oracle didn't know Jack had returned from the past timeline. They agreed to take different routes and meet up in Washington, D.C. Violet would draw the Daywalkers' attention, while Jack would secretly carry out the plan. That night, while Axel was sound asleep like a pig, he suddenly heard someone calling his name. When he woke up, he found himself in a strange place, and it was the shadow in front of him calling his name. He swiftly entered a door behind him. At the same time, Axel heard chicken screams not far away. Approaching, he found not a chicken, but Vanessa lying on the ground, her neck bleeding profusely. Wondering what was going on, Axel carried Vanessa into the cabin, and from the photos on the table, it was clear this was the home of Susan, Vanessa's old friend who had died at the hands of Sam. Soon enough, Vanessa's wounds had already healed, and she was awake. She asked Axel why he was there, but Axel also wanted to ask Vanessa. It turned out this was the Dark Realm, a place the Dark One had created based on Vanessa's obsessions, tormenting her with those obsessions every day. The shadow that had just appeared was the Dark One's gatekeeper left behind. Vanessa knew that the door was the way out, but despite thousands of attempts, she was always defeated by the shadow. Axel asked how long she had been there, but Vanessa couldn't say because time didn't exist in this dark realm, and the place they were in was where Susan had been killed by Sam, the event that transformed Sam into a murderous monster and was Vanessa's deepest regret. Axel then told her about everything that had happened, and now they were planning to head to the White House to eliminate the Dark One. However, Axel was worried that if he truly was trapped in this dark realm, his friend Violet would be in danger. Upon hearing this, Vanessa became extremely concerned for the safety of her two daughters. Despite the risks, she decided to try to break out again. Axel quickly stopped her, explaining that confronting the situation head-on had failed countless times before, and this time would be no different. This reminded Vanessa of something important. Every time she was attacked by the shadow, she wished for Axel to appear and help. It wasn't long before Axel actually did appear, suggesting that she had some control over this place. Vanessa then wondered if the shadow guarding the door was actually herself. Together, they approached the door, and the shadow appeared again. Vanessa said no need to hide anymore, realizing that the shadow was indeed her own darker self. Just then, the shadow transformed into Vanessa's likeness, but it was her dark side. Vanessa tried to control it, but it suddenly charged at Axel. Just at the crucial moment, it was frozen in place, since Vanessa had managed to control it from behind and forcefully pulled it in front of her. With a powerful shake, Vanessa absorbed her dark side into herself, causing a massive energy storm that knocked Axel 10 miles back. After the fusion was complete, the true Vanessa returned, and the iron door behind them automatically opened. She told Axel that he would wake up in his sleeping place, while she would directly parachute into Washington, D.C., already having a plan in mind. Placing her hand on Axel's head, the scene flashed, and Axel woke up in reality. He then told Violet that her trapped mother had returned from the Dark Realm. As they walked, Axel recounted his encounter with Vanessa to Violet, and they hurried towards the White House, which was under the Dark One's control. Meanwhile, near the White House, a portal of light suddenly appeared, and the much-anticipated Vanessa emerged to flex her sexy figure, but in the guise of a vampire named Nina, striding confidently towards the White House. Now, seemingly endowed with magical powers, Vanessa was a force to reckon with. In the president's office, vampire leaders from across the nation were gathered, discussing the purpose behind the Dark One summoning them. A bald leader boasted about their dominance and the territories they had conquered. He scoffed at the idea of obeying a weakened Dark One, but was interrupted by Oracle, who warned him what he said could lead to trouble. Just then, the Dark One transformed and revealed herself, furious at the dissatisfaction among its ranks, and killed everyone except the bald leader, whom it planned to torment slowly. However, Oracle believed they should not dispose of their forces so hastily. At this moment, Vanessa, in disguise of Nina, entered to gain their trust by claiming she had killed the last Van Helsing. The Dark One demanded proof, like the blood necklace, but Nina could only offer a vial of Van Helsing's blood. Doubting its authenticity, but too fearful to test it herself, the Dark One forced the bald leader to drink it. He convulsed and reverted to human form. The Dark One urgently asked about Van Helsing's body. Nina explained that although she killed Van Helsing repeatedly, he always resurrected, so she kept him at a secret location. Still skeptical, the Dark One was swayed when Nina expressed her admiration, deciding to keep her close for observation. On the other side, Jack and Violet had already arrived in a town near Washington, D.C. They were inquiring about how to gain entry when a tall man entered and informed them that he was sent by Axel to escort them into the city. He even knew their names, which convinced Jack and Violet to trust him. Following his directions, they passed through a tunnel, opened a large door, and finally entered a safe zone. Everything seemed normal here, with cars coming and going, seemingly unaffected by vampires. However, wanted posters were visible everywhere on the streets, and fortunately, Jack's photo was not among them. It seemed that the Dark One was unaware that Jack had returned from the past to the present. Afterward, they reached the designated meeting point. Jack went to check for any messages left by Axel at the Corona site, while Ivory hid behind a tree but was discovered by a police officer. Just as she was in danger, Jack returned in time. She knocked out the police officer and relayed the information left by Vanessa. As they were preparing to leave, a man stopped them and claimed he could take them to a safe place. They were blindfolded along the way, and once at the destination, their hoods were removed. Ivory then recognized the woman who approached them as the sergeant who had captured them before. Upon seeing Jack, the man realized that the legends were true. It said that 300 years ago, two Jack Van Helsings had appeared. One was Jack herself, and the other was the Countess's baby son, who was renamed with the same name. It was the latter who began the family's mission to hunt vampires. Jack only then discovered that the Countess's son she had saved was actually her own ancestor, which she found almost unbelievable. Inside the White House, Oracle hurriedly met with the Dark One and called Nina out, leaving a stack of photos on the table that clearly showed Jack and the blood necklace. It was only then that the Dark One realized Jack had returned. Seeing her own powers at stake, the Dark One immediately instructed Oracle to find Jack. Meanwhile, Nina, who was outside, overheard this news. As night fell, Jack planned to leave a message for Vanessa, revealing that the original Van Helsing was a descendant of the Countess. But after she placed the note, she sensed a familiar presence. Approaching, she encountered a strange vampire claiming to be her mother. Naturally skeptical, Jack demanded the vampire reveal a secret known only to them both. Nina then confessed that she had sent Jack to the past, confirming Jack's suspicions without a doubt. The two found a secluded spot where Nina told her that she would lure Oracle out that night for them to capture together and instructed their allies to prepare. However, there was still no word from Axel and Violet, and only Jack could transform Oracle due to the urgency. Vanessa was unable to wait any longer because she had been bitten by the first vampire elder and lacked the ability to transform higher-level vampires. She realized that Jack could extract the Dark One's power from within, affirming that they too were the ultimate weapon to defeat the Dark One. After finalizing their plan, the two parted ways. Nina returned to the White House where Oracle had been waiting in the corridor for a long time, jealous of the Dark One's admiration for Nina and eager to suppress her arrogance. Oracle attempted to strangle Nina from a distance, but Nina quickly retaliated, sending her flying like a toy. Surprised by her own weakness, Oracle used magic again to control Nina, who pretended to be in agony, but in the next moment, Nina sent her flying again, leaving Oracle bewildered by her own apparent weakness. Realizing she was no match for Nina, Oracle had no choice but to seek the protection of the Dark One. However, Nina followed her to the Dark One's room, where she informed them that she knew the location of the blood necklace and volunteered to retrieve it. The Dark One, eager to regain her power, was impatient. Just as Vanessa thought she had the upper hand, the Dark One suddenly sent Oracle to retrieve the necklace and instructed Nina to stay back and watch, complicating the situation. Without Vanessa's help, the magically adept Oracle could easily overpower everyone on Jack's side, leaving Vanessa secretly anxious. As Jack and the group were discussing how to deal with Oracle, Ivory suddenly heard something. Turning around, she saw Oracle and a squad of vampire forces appear behind them, catching them off guard and causing heavy casualties immediately. Ivory urged Jack to retreat quickly. In an instant, Oracle eliminated the surrounding guards and teleported right in front of Ivory, piercing her abdomen with a swift grab. A man attempted to shoot, but Oracle vanished and tore out his throat in a flash. Far away in the White House, Nina once again requested to retrieve the necklace, but the Dark One refused again. They had confidence in Oracle, who had served them for centuries, and questioned Nina why she knew that her powers were sealed in the blood necklace, leaving Vanessa unable to respond. Inside the base, Ivory told Jack to leave quickly. To protect everyone, Jack walked out with her hands raised. Seeing the opportunity, Oracle used her magic to pull Jack towards her step by step. The Dark One had already anticipated that they would soon regain their power. Delighted, they promised to consider taking Nina into their inner circle. Oracle pulled Jack in front of her, took the blood necklace, and Vanessa sensed the danger Jack was in. Just as Oracle was about to decapitate Jack, Vanessa unleashed powerful magic from afar, controlling the 4 vampire special forces around her and directing them to shoot at Oracle. Oracle used an ancient shield technique to block the bullets, which then rebounded, knocking down the 4 vampire forces. Exhausted, Oracle collapsed, and Ivory seized the moment to draw her great sword and charge at Oracle. Oracle pulled out the sword as Jack regained her consciousness and bite the weakened Oracle. At the same time, the Dark One sensed the transformation of Oracle. After vomiting black blood, Oracle stood up, but she was not in her normal state, continuously speaking in strange languages. The Dark One was extremely disappointed. The once invincible Oracle had failed. They questioned Nina why she insisted on going out with Oracle, suspecting that she knew there was an ambush set up. It was then that the Dark One realized it was all because of the Van Helsing blood that they had been lured into a trap. Vanessa no longer hid her identity, openly admitting who she was and telling the Dark One that it was because of her that she was trapped in the Dark Realm, and that's why she now possessed unprecedented power. With that, Vanessa seized the opportunity to bite the Dark One's arm. The Dark One flung Vanessa aside, and black blood began to ooze from her wrist. Vanessa then reverted to her true form, unleashing a powerful aura from within. With a single palm strike, she slammed the Dark One under a table. She was taken aback by her sudden surge in strength. However, the Dark One was not weak. Leaping onto the table, she emitted a powerful aura that sent Vanessa flying like a chicken. When they jumped down, an inexplicable voice filled their mind. It was the Countess's consciousness awakening due to Vanessa's influence. The Countess pleaded for Vanessa's help, but the Dark One quickly regained control. After several back and forths, the Countess informed Vanessa that the Dark One's grip on her was weakening, urging her to save herself. The Dark One dominated once more, and Vanessa attempted to bite her again but was thwarted and firmly choked by the neck. In desperation, Vanessa pulled out a dagger intending to stab the Dark One. The Countess's consciousness surfaced again, urging Vanessa to act swiftly. Confused by the unfolding events, Vanessa still managed to plunge the dagger into the Dark One's heart and then fled the scene. Elsewhere, Jack and the others were transporting Oracle to a second safe house, unaware that besides her injured eyes, her consciousness was also in turmoil. Their only hope now was to find Vanessa for help. Ivory left to meet at their predetermined rendezvous point. The streets were under martial law. No one could go out freely, so Ivory had to proceed stealthily. Suddenly, Axel and Violet appeared. Just as Ivory was about to knock out a strange police officer approaching them, Axel stopped her. It was Vanessa in disguise. After a brief reunion, they all headed to the safe house. Meanwhile, in the White House, the Dark One's consciousness was fluctuating, and her control over the Countess was weakening. To regain strength quickly, she slit her own arm, intending to draw power from the darkness, targeting Oracle. Oracle struggled, but suddenly her eyes turned white. Back at the safe house, Jack informed Vanessa that Oracle had once been a vampire hunter, vital for defeating the Dark One. Vanessa learned that the Dark One had possessed the Countess's body. Meanwhile, Axel had captured the president's aide, who they needed for a secure map to infiltrate the White House. He was the key. While they were persuading him to defect, a painful scream was heard. They rushed over and found Oracle plunged back into darkness. In this dark realm, a certain magic allows one's consciousness to connect with another's, though it comes with strong side effects that could also drag oneself into darkness. Oracle's role was crucial, and Vanessa had no choice but to attempt it. She placed her hands on Oracle's head, both of their expressions turning to agony. As time dragged on, Vanessa struggled more, and the dark energy transferred from Oracle into Vanessa through her arms. Her eyes turned black, and with a painful scream, Vanessa fainted. As the darkness around her eyes faded, Vanessa woke up, and so did Oracle. She recognized Jack, and the two joyfully embraced after a long separation. At the same time, the Dark One sensed that Oracle had awakened, and her opportunity had finally arrived. At that moment, the president's aide was notifying the White House guards to evacuate. He had done everything within his power, and they planned to act once the innocent civilians had left. Jack went to inform Oracle to get ready to leave. Casually, Oracle asked her about the specifics of their plan. After Jack finished explaining, Oracle's expression unnaturally changed. She indicated that she had something to tell Jack and whispered for her to come closer. Unexpectedly, Oracle suddenly pulled out a dagger and stabbed Jack right in the heart. By this time, everyone had assembled, but Jack was nowhere to be seen. Ivory knew that Jack had gone to find Oracle, and sensing something was amiss, they immediately went to find them. When they arrived, Jack was lying on the bed. Violet pulled out the dagger, and Jack miraculously came back to life. However, the blood necklace had disappeared. Everyone quickly searched for Oracle, who was now standing on the rooftop, not knowing why she was there, still holding the blood necklace. They urged her to come down quickly, but just as they were about to succeed, the Dark One regained control over her. Vanessa started taunting her to draw her attention, while Violet tried to flank her. By now, the Dark One was aware of their plan and mockingly dismissed their efforts as futile, easily sending Violet and her companion flying. Then, she opened the blood necklace, releasing a massive cloud of energy. At that moment, Oracle returned to normal, seeing the necklace in her hands, already opened by herself. Knowing she could never escape the Dark One, she chose to end her life by jumping off the rooftop. Inside the White House, the Dark One welcomed back her power. The dark energy swirled around the room before all rushing into her stinky mouth. Her power fully converged upon her, emitting light, and then a beam of energy shot up into the sky. Axel and the others watched from afar as the sky changed color, wondering how they could possibly win now. Having gained all her power, the Dark One unleashed a powerful aura, plunging the world into darkness. The group gazed at Oracle's body, unable to understand. Despite having returned to human form, why was she still controlled by the Dark One? Vanessa then noticed a pentagram branded on her neck, guessing that this might be the reason and perhaps the key to their victory. So Vanessa branded the pentagram onto her own arm and began to communicate spiritually with the Dark One. Inside the White House, the Dark One sensed Vanessa's consciousness approaching and immediately fell into a faint. Vanessa's consciousness found the Countess, urging her to resist the Dark One and take control of her own body until Vanessa could summon her again for a coordinated attack. Suddenly, the Dark One regained consciousness and summoned pentagram magic, severally cutting off Vanessa's connection. Jack, worried about Vanessa being influenced, suggested removing it, but Vanessa confidently stated that she could control it. Meanwhile, Violet was concerned that with Oracle dead, no one could use the spell on the scroll, which was the key to defeat the Dark One. Vanessa then told them that during her connection with Oracle, she had seen all her memories, and thus she could also understand the text on the scroll. Just then, Ivory brought the former president, and after they discussed the final battle plan, Vanessa and 4 others formed a team. With the help of insiders, they stealthily made their way to the White House, but suddenly Vanessa felt a burning sensation on her arm. At the same time, the Dark One sensed an imminent threat. With a gentle motion, she activated the crystal ball, gathering energy continuously until a wave of dark power rapidly spread out. The shockwave knocked everyone down in its path. By the time they got up, those around had transformed into vampires, including the soldiers escorting the former president. Only those bitten by Van Helsing were spared. After Jack and 2 others dealt with the vampires, Axel realized that the transformation wasn't isolated, so he went to assist the former president, leaving Vanessa and her team to handle the Dark One. Charging through the corridors, Vanessa knew a tough battle awaited. Opening the door, they were met by vampire commandos who opened fire. Vanessa quickly cast a spell, freezing the bullets in mid-air before sending them rebounding back. Attempting further resistance, the commandos were effortlessly subdued by Vanessa's telekinetic powers, while her daughters could only cheer from the sidelines. Emerging from the corridor, Vanessa disarmed 6 vampires in an instant and demanded them to choose life or death. But without waiting for their consensus, she eliminated them all. Approaching the main door, they found it concealed by the Dark One, but this didn't deter Vanessa. She conjured a portal and instructed her daughters to enter and act as the situation demanded. After entering the portal herself, Vanessa began to recite a spell from the magic scroll, but the Dark One, with a wave of her hand, silenced Vanessa's voice, causing Jack and her companions to be thrown aside. The Dark One picked up the scroll, claiming that burning it would eliminate her weakness. However, she suddenly recalled Vanessa's past promise to sacrifice her own flesh and blood in loyalty to her. Unsealing Vanessa, she handed her a knife and directed her towards Violet, whose eyes were already red with control. Just as she was about to strike, Violet's desperate call of Mom snapped her back to reality. Struggling, Vanessa called out to the Countess as the Dark One lost control of her body, dropping the scroll. Vanessa resumed chanting the spell, and the scroll glowed brightly, affecting the Dark One. As Violet and her companion moved to attack, the Dark One shattered the blood necklace used for sealing with a loud scream. Vanessa continued her incantation, but without the necklace, they lacked a container for the seal. At that moment, Vanessa realized that Violet and Jack were the weapons against the Dark One, and she herself was the vessel for the seal. At her command, Jack bit into the Dark One, and a surge of dark power erupted, gathering into a massive energy vortex that Vanessa absorbed. Simultaneously, vampires outside collapsed, the dark sky cleared, and the infected reverted to humans. When Violet and Jack awoke, the Countess was back to normal, and Vanessa, regaining consciousness, informed them that the darkness was inside her but beyond her control. She could only return to normal with a new container and urged her daughters not to worry. She would remain in a deep sleep. Inside the White House, the former president has also become the current president. For Axel's heroic deeds, the president awarded him the highest honors. At this moment, Ivory sensed that there must be other members of the sisterhood elsewhere, and she set out to find them. Meanwhile, the survivor girl who had joined the group had grown up, and the two planned to flirt with young men together if the chance arose. Violet also told the Countess that her son now had his own life and was continuing the family legacy, revealing that Violet and Jack were his descendants. Upon waking, the Countess joyfully discovered she had 2 great-granddaughters from generations unknown. At this time, Axel still chose to stay by Vanessa's side, as if nothing had happened. Vanessa, now asleep like a pig, was uncertain when she would awaken. In her dreams, Vanessa returned to her home where she saw her best friend Susan and her now grown-up daughter. Vanessa knew these were all illusions, but she didn't wish to shatter them. Perhaps this was what her heart most desired, and with that, the entire drama concludes.